Shabbat Shalom to everybody,
Shalom.
live and in person and live and digital. I'm just glad that you're all a part of our time together today. We're coming into the section of the Torah, one of my favorite parts. I guess it's kind of used to say which part is your favorite, because I mean, it's all good, right? But we're coming to the prominence of Joseph in this Torah portion, or in the Torah itself. Joseph is important to us because we are, by connection to all that is Israel, which is many parts, many various parts. Our connection is that we are of the house of Joseph, also known as Ephraim, also known as Samaria, also known as the house of Israel. By comparison against, not necessarily against, but in contrast to the house of Yehuda, our Jewish brothers. When you and I were born again, it may have been in a church altar or a church worship service or in a Christian understanding of what this word says. For you, it may have been that you prayed the sinner's prayer. You meant it from your heart. And to the best of our understanding, we accepted Messiah. And over the years, we have learned what that requires of us, what that means to us, what impact that has to us. And maybe at some point, we actually read Romans chapter 11. And we realized that there is a greater whole than ourselves as an individual. And our Western way of thinking, what we were more than likely processing, was me, myself, I am being born again, I am turning from my sinful past, and I'm seeking to become, quote unquote, saved, whatever that means, receiving salvation, asking Messiah to come live in my heart. We didn't know, really nowhere in Scripture does it say ask him to come live in your heart. But we understood to some degree that it was an effect upon us as an individual. However, at some point, because of the fact that you're here, it suggests to me that we realize there's more to it than me. There's something more involved than me right now. Sure. Good to see you. There is this thing called Israel that has become a reality for us. I don't know about you, but I remember the days as a kid wanting to be a part of the popular group. Anybody remember that? Maybe you just were in a popular group and everybody wanted to be a part of you, but for me, it was always some other collective of some sort, and I wanted to be a part of that which was popular and acceptable and noticed and you know, had notoriety for whatever reason, good or bad. Everybody wants to be accepted. Everybody wants to be included. I'm sure that many of us remember the days of choosing up sides for some kind of playground or sport event. And you'd all line up and there would be two captains. Anybody going through that horrific experience? Pick me, pick me, pick me. And you're down to the last two. And they look at the other person and say, I'll take them. All right, we'll take Barry. So I would join the team thinking, I'll show you. You'll pick me first next time. Right? That was my attitude. Everybody wants to be included. The thing is that when we become aware of the greater whole that we have somehow now been made a part of, it's not the losing side, it is the winning side.
Yes.
Hold on a second, that just kind of hit me there for a second. This entity that we are now a part of, it's ancient. Matter of fact, it was the reason for everything that is to become an existent thing. The world and all it is was created for the reality of Am Israel to be revealed in the physical realm as we know it. The whole purpose is at the end of all things said and done, that the Creator dwells on this planet, renewed and refurbished forever and without end, with those that are called His people, and that people are called Israel.
Yes.
Now, there's a variety of possible potential meanings of the word, but it includes the letters S-A-R or SAR, or prince. It includes the name at the end, El, Prince of El. It is also suggested one that has struggled or wrestled and has overcome.
Yes.
We were not born with an Israelite spoon in our mouth.
Come on now.
We lived like the prodigal and the pig pen. We lived with pork on our bread. We lived with shrimp in our veins.
Yes.
We lived according to the normal courses of this going world that is dominant around us. And God chose, for whatever reason, beyond my explanation, to allow His Ruach to begin to speak to us, so that at some point, somewhere where He found us, we began to ask the question, is this all that there is? Is there anything more? I was a part of that revival in the mid to late 90s, where the prayer every day was, more, Lord, more. And I wanted my cup full until it was not just dribbling over. I wanted a well, a springing up well, gushing out of me, that there was more being poured in that could possibly be contained. Maybe we ought to start praying again, more, Lord. Master, pour in more. We could use some of those times of refreshing. This mysterious, wonderful, overwhelming thing that you and I have now become connected to is in existence because of a process that has included tragedy and spectacle and warfare and endurance, pain, isolation, misunderstanding, being ostracized, being exiled, being pilgrimed, being invited in to later on be invited to leave. Assimilation, forgetting who we are. I saw a map in my courses of study this week, and it showed the British Isles. And it was showing the picture of the remnant of the Celtic people over on the, I guess it would be the western edge of everything. Then into Scotland and Ireland. And I looked down where Wales is at, where my people come from, and we were Celts. But there was this invading force of Saxons and Picts that were coming in. Anglos that were coming in. And the author was noting under this map that some of those peoples that were Celtic were there originally were displaced Hebrews, and those that were invading under different identities and understandings were also remnants of Hebrews. And the Anglo-Saxon Celtic Pict wars that took place, and you see all the movies, you know, from what's the one with William Wallace, Braveheart, and all those kinds of movies. What is it? It's basically, it's a possibility. You know, I'm not here to declaring a doctrine, but in some DNA remnants, there are Hebrews attacking Hebrews under different names, banners, and understandings of things. Well, be low and hold. Have we not carried that on into our day? And we camp out under all kinds of banners and identities and variations and gatherings. And what do? We stand behind our stone fortress walls of doctrines and belief and practice and hurl rockets and stones at those who disagree with us. Because bless Yah, we're the ones that's right. Can I tell you that this family root that we come from, the patriarchs, Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, every one of these men had a dysfunctional home. Family dysfunction is not a modern era invention or reality. It is at our very roots. The very first family on the face of the earth had family dysfunction so great that a sibling killed his sibling. The first murder recorded is between brothers. The house has been broken all along. Well, then that justifies the way we treat each other, right? No. Because Ezekiel says that Yah is going to, in the hand of a prophet, in the hand of the prophet, he's going to take one stick for the house of Yehuda and another stick, a separate stick, a disconnected stick for the house of Joseph. And in the hand of prophetic ability, calling, and anointing, fuse them together so that they become like one stick in his hand. And I look around and I imagine what we have today as the house of Yehuda, and you have so many varieties. You have Jews who are secular and non-practicing in any form and reality. Those who are Jews have no idea that they are Jews. They do not practice anything whatsoever. It's completely lost to them. All the way to the ultra, it's called the ultra-Orthodox, the Hasidics and so forth. And so many varieties in between. They're dysfunctional to some degree. And then I look at us. Where do we begin? And the way I've described it is we don't have a stick, we got a pile of sawdust. And the wind's blowing us in all directions. And somehow somebody, well, the Father will do it. I know the Father's going to do it, but he's going to use human agency to do this. Somebody's going to stand up with prophetic glue and start taking this pile of sawdust and causing it to begin to cling one to the other until it becomes a solid mass of a stick again, because we have to become one in order to become one with Echad with Yehuda. I don't know where I'm going. I ain't even got to this yet. I want you to understand the dilemma that we're in. It dawned on me a few days ago, last week actually, And I've talked with several of my peers, called Mike and I have spent a few hours on the phone, and I've talked to fellow elders with B'nai Joseph, and we have discussed this reality. If you were to imagine that's not Hillary Rodham Clinton. This is the Hebrew Roots community. Now, it might be I won't go there. Never mind. This Hebrew Roots community in the Western Hemisphere, in the North American continent, Canada and the USA and Mexico. When I first became aware of the Hebrew Roots community of the House of Ephraim, I imagined from what had been given me as an understanding that because there was a ministry connected to this reality out in the Midwest that was attracting some 1,000 to 1,200 people for Sukkot every year. And that was just one gathering, that we must be an enormous group of people. And I was finding that there were little pockets of people everywhere. So in my mind, I have just imagined over the years that we are a very large group. What is our reality? The most glorious number that anyone that I've talked to can come up with is of all North America, we might number somewhere around 20,000. Maybe. That's high end. 25 might be inflated. In America alone, there are 330 million people, which says that we are about a small fraction of less than 1% somewhere. And I'm thinking, Father, what is it that you're doing? How many people can we reach? I'm not saying that everybody has to come to a realization of who we are. And that's not to say that this is all that is going into the kingdom. I believe that there are those in the church that are going in, and I believe that there are those in the Messianic ranks that are going in. But as far as the Hebrew Roots community, who believe that we're supposed to become one again with Yehuda and dwell in the land, that the kingdom is Yeshua bringing his reality to the earth, ruling from the earth, and that both houses are going to live together as one, according to what Ezekiel or Ezekiel 37 says. We're small. We haven't made any impact yet. And while you and I may have imagined that we were the latter reaping of this group, you and I are not even the harvest of it. We're seeds to be put in the ground. We're not all that there is. We are the sowing. Look around and see your fellow members and a sack of seeds. That ought to be encouraging. Have you contemplated the seed process of being hidden away, broken apart, fractured, and dissolving until the life that is really inside you begins to shoot, push, stress, strive, shove, until you can break ground, survive the choking out of weeds and enduring the inclement weather, and praying for the light to hit you so that you can grow tall enough, big enough, large enough that you can begin to bud and blossom, and finally you can begin to shoot some evidence of fruit. All of that is still ahead of us. We haven't been sown. yet. Not a good reality check. And it's staggering. And we think, can we improve our technology and our approach to sharing our message and maybe double this message? Double our number? How long would that take? How long would it take us to break 100,000?
What's the remnant? The remnant's a small number.
Small and puny number. All right, now let's get to where we're at today. That's the introduction to my introduction. At the point of this word, it begins in chapter 37. Let's read the first 11 verses, which say, "And Jacob dwelt in the land of his father's sojournings in the land of Canaan. This is the genealogy of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brothers. And the young man was with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought an evil report of them to his father. And Israel loved Joseph more than all of his children because he was the son of his old age. And he made him a ketanet pasim, a long robe. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all of his brothers, they hated him and were not able to speak peaceably to him. And Joseph dreamed a dream and told it to his brothers, so they hated him even more. He said to them, 'Please listen to this dream which I have dreamed. See, we were binding sheaves in the midst of the field, and see, my sheaf rose up and also stood up, and see, your sheaves stood all around and bowed down to my sheaf.' His brothers said to him, 'Shall you indeed reign over us? Shall you indeed rule over us?' So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. And he dreamed still another dream and related it to his brothers and said, 'See, I've dreamed another dream. And see, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars bow down to me.' And he related to his father and his brothers, and his father rebuked him and said to him, 'What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall we, your mother and I, and your brothers, indeed come to bow down to the earth before you?' Dreams and visions are the seedbed of discipline and destiny. You can't reach your destiny until you have experienced the necessary disciplines to get there. If you arrive at your destiny without discipline, you will become destructive in your destiny. Amen. That's true. Yaakov has lived a life of turmoil since leaving his parents many years ago at the stage of this writing. He's lived with Laban for 20 years. He suffered lost wages, out-of-pocket expenses, and constantly was being taken advantage of. For 20 years. Some of you know what that feels like. He is contended with Esau, fearing for his life and his family's lives, wrestling with one from the spiritual realm, and now he is going to limp for the rest of his days because of his wrestling. His daughter has been raped by a prince, and the prince's father, the king, then came to try to fix it by encouraging assimilation. Forget who you are, become one of us, and let's just all get along together and be nice. In response, Yaakov's sons went and destroyed every man alive in that particular kingdom. And now his family, their name is a stench. His primary bride, Raquel, that he has loved and worked for not just 7 years, actually 14 years, died, giving birth to his youngest son. And scholars suggest it because it says Bilhah and Zilpah, his wives, that Leah has also died at this point. And I can see why he would say, it's enough. I have wealth. I have 2 wives left. I have children. But Yahweh, I have fought enough. My heart's broke and my body hurts, and I would just like to settle down and live with some shalom for a while. Can you understand where he's at? Any of you have said, Father, can I please have a little time of peace? Do I have to constantly deal with some kind of drama, some kind of pain, some kind of stuff? Where is the good spot? What you and I would call normal, probably in this life, does not exist. Somehow we watch the old television shows that are black and white, and mama stands up in the morning in heels and pearls and a dress and has breakfast made when you get to the table, and you eat and you grab your books and lunch and you go to school and you learn facts and you come home and you play and all is well. Whatever dad does is plenty of enough money to live in a nice home in a clean neighborhood, and everybody just, well, it's just a good life. That is a foreign reality to most people. Amen. This dream of shalom in the home will not come true for Yaakov for another 22 years. 22 years. Next month, in just a couple of weeks, we're entering into the Gregorian calendar year of 2020. Can you imagine? Yah says, everything that you want will come true in 2042. Until then, your heart's going to be broke. You're going to struggle. You're going to lose your prophetic vision, and you're going to contemplate, why don't I just die and give up for 22 more years? But in 2042, there is a major turn. How many of you would say, let it be true for my children, just let me out of here? The last 20 years have been hard enough. I'm just trying to be a blessing. Just perhaps then we could call these long 22 years the time of quote unquote Yaakov or Jacob's trouble. The thing is, he doesn't know that it's getting ready to happen. It's going to hit him from the blind side, and he's going to be left without an answer for 22 years. It is our dreams. It is our visions that propel us forward, or they restrict us. One of the two. They shape our future or they shrink it. They tell other people who we are and what we are. Our dreams, our visions, they chart a course of action, for ourselves and those who follow us, or they can be a source of division and destruction. And they can be both at the same time. In Proverbs, Mishlei 29 in verse 18, everybody knows this front end of this verse, where there is no vision, the people perish. Our translation says the people are let loose. Another translation says the people cast off restraint. Dreams and visions are the corral. They are the boundary markers. They are the road signs. They are the ditches on the side of the highway that keep you and I traveling on a certain path, lest we fall off and end up somewhere we don't need to be. If you don't have a dream, if you don't have a vision, You will be then one who meanders around, wanders loosely around, trying to see which way is the least obstructive, the least resistant. The second half of that verse says, though, but blessed is he who guards the Torah. The Torah is the boundary lines of your vision. It is the field where your vision can take place. It is the place where you sow the seeds of your dreams and visions, and Yah brings it to pass. Joseph had dreams that showed himself being the ruler of his family. Maybe his father's dream of a time of shalom would come to pass if he could rise up and see his own dream come to pass. Dad's dream is fulfilled, and the fulfillment of my dream. I'm sure that Joseph believed in his dreams, but he could not have been aware of the process necessary for that dream to come to pass. So connecting that to our sack of seeds, Galatians 6, 7, and 9 says, do not be led astray. Elohim is not mocked, for whatever a man sows, that he shall also reap. Verse 9 says, and let us not lose heart in doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we do not grow weary. Weariness, depression, frustration, failure are dream killers because they make you weary. Thank you, Father, that he is held steadfast for the plan that he has created before the world came into existence. And what he sees in you and I, he has not given up on. I believe in him who believes in me. I believe in him who believes in you. I trust that which I have committed against unto him against that day. I believe he will bring it to pass. How is he going to do it? I have no clue. I have no clue. 3 points I want to talk to you about. And I'm not talking primarily to you today, whether it's heard or not. My voice today is a voice that I pray is prophetic and is heard the world over, because I'm talking to the Hebraic roots community at large. And this is something all of us here and beyond need to hear. Number one, those with dreams and visions, D and V. Let me rephrase that. That's not right. Those without a dream or vision are critical of those who do. If you don't have a dream, if you don't have a vision, but someone else does, we oftentimes become critical of them. Here he comes. Here he comes. Just wait. He's going to bring it out. He's going to start talking about it. They're going to go there. They're going to start describing how great things are going to be and what they're going to do. And on and on and on it goes. And if he does, I promise you, I'm going to get up and just smack him down on the floor. I've had it. I don't want to hear it no more. Y'all look at me like that's never come out of your mouth. Do we have to talk about this again? We call such people braggarts. Someone said, oh, they ain't bragging if you can really do it. Joseph's brothers were incensed that not only did Joseph have a dream and a vision, but that it was one that called Joseph strong and a leader and capable. When someone has a dream, they have a vision, they're working toward their goal, they're on the path that's going to take them to where they're needing to go, where they believe that they're supposed to go, it causes you and I to look at ourselves and say, what am I? Father, why didn't you give me a call? Why didn't you give me a dream and a vision? What makes them so special? Now, I know you've at least thought that. What makes them so special? And then the other part, what makes them think they're so special? You sit in a class, everybody takes the same test. Somebody gets an A, you get a C minus. You studied for the test, they studied for the test. How did they get an A? They studied more effectively. They may have paid more attention in class. Why did you get a C minus? Because you didn't get as many right as they did. Is it their fault you got a C minus? No. What they got is what they earned. This is what you got. Well, if I had all the answers that they have, I've got an A too. So I'll go ponder and think about that. What are we talking about? This criticism is rooted oftentimes in jealousy. Why did these brothers hate Joseph so bad? They were jealous of him. It says that they got to the place they could not speak peaceably to him. If you go back to chapter 34 and verse number 7, in the incident where Dinah had been raped, it says that when they came and they heard from their father what had happened, they said, this thing should not be done in Israel. They were now calling themselves the collective group called Israel. They saw themselves not as a bunch of brothers, a band of brothers, but they were now seeing themselves as a nation called Israel. We're all equal as a part of this nation. But evidently they had some questions about the reality of that identity and how firmly they were planted in that, because when Joseph stood up and said, I, in my dreams and visions, am the leader. Oh, no. We're not going to have one to get the blessing and the rest of us be blessed and sent away. We're all going to be in this together, bub. And if you try to rise up and take individually what we believe we have collectively, we'll wipe you out. Because that kind of vision can't be tolerated. They considered themselves shepherds. Why do a group of shepherds need a particular king of shepherds? You watch your sheep, I'll watch this group of sheep. The sheep all belong to Daddy. As long as Daddy's telling us where to go today, there's nothing else that needs to be done. In other words, status quo is enough. Nations, though, do not get built out of status quo. Somebody's got to forge ahead. Someone's got to have an idea. Somebody's got to be an administrator. Somebody's got to organize. Somebody's got to push. There's somebody's got to fight. There are those who got to be have ingenuity. There are those that need to create. There are those who need to supply. A nation takes a large group of people doing a lot of different things. But without a leader, you don't have a nation. Like it or not, somebody's got to lead. Well, that's not a problem as long as I'm the leader. When I was younger, and we would be in a class assignment and the teacher would divide us up in groups, the instructions were find a spokesman, and here's the problem, and solve the problem, and the spokesman will speak for everybody. When we would get in our group, if in the first 3 or 4 seconds someone did not stand up and say, I'll be the spokesman, I took that role. Okay, I'm the spokesman. Now, how are we going to fix this? We choose up sides. We're going to play football. I get in the huddle. Who's going to quarterback? I will. I can throw the ball. I can run the ball. I can tell you what to do. In a group setting, I just took on the role of leader. That's what I felt comfortable doing. And when I meant what I said, most people looked at me and said, okay. Can I tell you that when you go to a new church and you're their new pastor and you stand up and you say to them, hello, I'd like to introduce myself to you. I am now your pastor. Oh, really? We've had a few of you guys coming here before. Sam, I don't know if you remember this or not, but the first meeting I had with my council was we used to call Freedom Tab up the road. First meeting, I walked in and introduced myself. I'm your new pastor. I've been appointed to be the pastor of this church by Overseer Keith Gunter out of Roanoke. And, you know, my goal is to come here. And the first meeting, I don't know if you remember, so I asked for a raise. Because the housing allowance was this much, and I needed that much in order to get the house for my family to move in. And I think we needed an extra $100 or $200 a month. And we got it. I walked out of that meeting and said, job one done, check. Now let's move the family into town. Let's make this thing happen. Let's get in the pulpit and let's go. I went home and went, how did I pull that off? People are critical of a leader who has a vision and a dream because at times they are intimidated by someone who's got a game plan and a goal and a vision. Does it bother you that someone would stand up and say, this is our goal, these are the next steps that we need to take, this is how we're going to do this, this is a worthy goal, I've prayed about it, the Father has spoke to me, this is how we're going to do it, I need you to get on board, I need your help, and we're going to make this happen. Does that bother you? Or do we come together and say, well, we don't know where we're going. Y'all got any ideas? When that person hollers charge, the rest of us look around and say, should we take a vote? At some point, you got to be Keefa. Everyone's grabbing. You say, what in the world are you thinking? And he said, I'm getting out of the boat. The master called me to come to him. I'm going to walk on water and get to him. You can't do that. Watch. Stands up on water and starts walking. A Keefa can get out there and sink like the rest of us. The popular saying is only one man has ever walked on water. I beg to differ. There have been two. There have been two. When he got back in the boat, he was drenched. But he could look at the rest of them and say, did you see that? I walked on water. If you obey the master's command, you can do the impossible. Joseph wearing this coat of consequence. A ketanet pasim. It came down past the fingers. It's a garment that is often reserved for children of royalty. to signify that as a prince or princess, they're not given to manual labor. Joseph was a shepherd. He did go out with his brothers, but when he got the coat, it's almost like he didn't have to go out to be a shepherd anymore. So when they saw him approaching, here he comes, wearing his little daddy's coat. And then he starts spouting off dreams and visions. Can I tell you that being daddy's favorite does not make you a good leader? Your mama, your daddy may think that you walk on water without trying. They may think that, well, I won't say it that way. I'm on there. They may think you're a perfection. Chances are they have an inflated vision of you because of their great love and admiration for you. Yeshua's day. Isaiah 53:6 says, we all like sheep went astray, each one of us has turned to his own way, and Yahweh has laid on him the crookedness of us all. The first part of that is what I want you to focus on, and that is that the sheep had gone astray. Yirmiyahu, Jeremiah 50:6, my people have been wandering sheep. Their shepherds have led them astray, turning them away from the mountains. They've gone from mountain to hill. They have forgotten their resting place. This is connected to Matthew 9 and verse 36. And having seen the crowds, he, Yeshua, was moved with compassion for them because they were weary and scattered as sheep having no shepherd. The leadership, the religious leadership of that day had failed the people. They were not leading them to the right path. They did not correctly understand their leadership roles. But when Yeshua stood up as the good shepherd who loved the sheep, who put his hands on the sheep, healed them, raised them up, encouraged them, anointed them, and sent them away rejoicing, the other shepherds were critical. The religious leaders of that day says, let's just keep them coming to the temple and paying their money. Yeshua came saying, I come to give you the kingdom. There's something greater than the temple here. I'm greater than the temple. You tear this temple down and in 3 days I will raise it back up. Who do you think you are? Right? Someone with a dream, someone with a vision, and those who don't have it will become critical. In Yochanan, John chapter 1, verse 46, and Nathanael said to him, is it possible for any good matter to come out of Nazareth? Phillips said to him, come see. He came out of where? Nothing ever good comes out of that place. In Yochanan 10, verse 37 and 38, Yeshua said, if I do not do the works of my Father, do not believe me. But if I do, though you do not believe me, believe the works, so that you know and believe that the Father is in me and I am in him. What is it going to take for effective leadership to rise up in our day? Can I tell you that my opinion, the number one problem in the Hebraic roots community is a lack of effective leadership. We got teachers. We got pages you can list the names of teachers on, known and unknown. They're everywhere. What we don't have are shepherds. There's a difference between a pastor, shepherd, and a teacher. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Yes.
teachers are kind of what we used to say about the evangelists. They blow in, blow off, and blow out. Come in, stir it up, walk away, and leave the pastor to deal with it. Well, at least something happened. When I left the church system and the denomination that I used to be a part of, I didn't want to be called pastor anymore because of the negative connotation that pastors had, at least in those days, some 18 years ago. Don't call me pastor. Now I don't think of it as such a dirty word because we're in such dire need of a pastoral shepherding heart. A teacher will come in and give you a lot of information, but when you're broken and you're in need, if they're not a part of your local congregation, try calling them up and saying, can you come to where I'm at and pray for me? My family is in dire need. Well, you know, it costs too much to get on the plane, take me too long to get there. Is there not someone local? The shepherd is the person that will get in the trench with you and understand why you're in the trench and not criticize you for being in the trench, but then help you to devise a plan to get out of the trench and then teach you how not to live in the trench anymore. For that, they don't get medals and they don't have grand glorious ministry titles. But on the day when the kingdom comes, I believe that Messiah will say, all the shepherds come to the front and center. You go in first. Why? Because without them, there would be no sheep. Our community is truly sheep wandering around because we don't have enough shepherds. A mentor that I've had for a long number of years, many years ago, said in regards to those who are looking for the straight path and the narrow gate, that there is a puny number that will find it. I've never forgotten that. God has given us Joseph's dreams and visions. He has given us dreamers and visionaries. The problem is that those who have dreams, who have visions, who can see the bigger picture and the goals that we need to get to, oftentimes their immaturity causes people to not follow them. And then you add to that our criticism of our former leaders because they don't understand what we think we understand, because they don't keep Shabbat, because they celebrate holidays that we no longer keep, because of a long list of stuff. We say critical things about them, and when you've criticized them, it's easy then to become critical of any leader. Am I saying anything anyone needs to hear today? Let's turn this coin over. Those with dreams and visions often lord over those who don't. It's called having a coat or a badge or a title. You take an ordinary guy, just Joe Ordinary, Joe Average, and you give him a jacket with a badge on it and a title, he'll straighten his shoulders and shine his shoes and look around for somebody to tell what to do. Johnny's got a jacket, I'm sure, that the mechanics wear. You know, you always see that blue jacket with Johnny written across it. You got one of those, Johnny?
Mine's green, but yeah.
If underneath that it says mechanic, then he knows what his job is. He goes in and he mechanics. But you put beside or right in front of that word mechanic, head mechanic or chief mechanic. And hand it to him and say, Johnny, this is your new coat. And he looks at that and he says, head mechanic, chief mechanic.
Not everyone.
He straightens his shoulders and he walks out. I would. I would. What is it saying? We recognize your skill level. We recognize your potential. We recognize who you are. And we need a leader among the mechanics, and we have decided that it's you. Now go lead. Does that make him a leader?
No.
Does that make him qualified? Does that give him a skill set to lead people? I don't know what Yahweh was thinking when he spoke to an 18-year-old kid whose hair was too long and an altar in Martinsville, snotting, crying, praying, saying, I'll do anything you ask me to do. Yah, for whatever reason, unknown to me in a world of seeking wisdom, I have called you to preach. I got up out of that altar with a vision, an understanding, a calling, a purpose. I thought that I was going to graduate high school and just go to work in the local factories and spend my life like my parents, working in factories. And a furniture factory or a textile mill. That was my destiny. Maybe I would sing in the choir and teach Sunday school. But beyond that, I didn't know what else I was going to do. Laura and I got married just a few years later, and we had these big-eyed dreams. This guy and his wife came to Martinsville and preached several revivals. He drove a Lincoln Town Car. He and his wife dressed really nice. He had a different suit to wear every night of the revival. His wife was pretty. He preached good. And I just knew in my heart that this calling to preach, that's what the Father had in mind. Laura and I were going to go. She's going to dress nice and look good. I want to have new suits. We're going to drive this Lincoln Town Car. We're going to drive up into people's driveways. We're going to preach revivals. The altar is going to fill. It's going to be glorious. And then we're going to go on to the next meeting. I'm going to have to call up pastors and say, I can't make it next week. This one's been held over. It's so glorious that he wants me to go 2 weeks. I got my start preaching in nursing homes.
Widows.
1 week we went to this side of the nursing home where people came out in wheelchairs and with walkers, and most of them couldn't hear a word I said. Or they would fall asleep before I could get going good. The next week we went to the mental side where they were on Mars somewhere. I will never forget them digging through the ashtray looking for the remnants of enough of a cigarette to smoke while I'm preaching. So that's where I learned to preach, was to people who couldn't either hear me or I didn't know who I was, let alone who they were. So much for a Lincoln Town Car and long revivals. But I had a vision. I had no idea that what God was more inclined to do for me was to put me in churches and to pastor and to lead people. Somebody gave me a coat with a badge on it. I had to be refined. So as a pastor, I got to the place where I thought I was bold enough that I could say, hello, I'm your pastor, I'm your leader, and this is what we're going to do. And if this is not what you want to do, right there's the door. Well, boy, that's effective. Can I tell you that your vision requires some sense of credibility? Some part of it has to become proven in order for anyone else to be willing to follow you. It's hard to go to your first church and tell them that you're the pastor and you're the youngest adult in the place. To tell couples who've been married for a decade or two how to solve their marriage problems when you've only been married about 5 yourself. It's hard. But at some point, your life has had enough battles. You have enough scars. You have enough arrows pulled out of you. You've survived enough tests. You have accomplished enough wisdom about you that your vision begins to take some sense of shape and function, and people began to look at you and say, I believe in what you're hearing and what you're saying. In that process, from the beginning to that point, it's very easy for those who have a dream and a vision to simply say, but I have a dream and a vision. Why aren't you following me? I don't understand. I've heard from God. It's dangerous to say that. They got jackets for people like that, and they put you in places. Yochanan chapter 10, verse 4 and 5. And when he has brought out his own sheep, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him because they know his voice. And they shall by no means follow a stranger, but shall flee from him because they do not know what he has been saying to them. Where do they learn his voice? In the long hours he spends with them. You've become accustomed to my voice over the last 17, 18, 19 years. At some point, either I have credibility or I don't. At some point, a leader has the ability to stand up and decree, this is what God says, and people follow, or they don't trust and they do not. Joseph mistakenly thought that his role was to tell Daddy about all of his brother's failings. And then he turned and said, but why don't you like me? What did I do? Let's talk about the Western cultural model of leadership. Unfortunately, what we've heard from most pulpits is your faith is proven by how much you give to the leadership. Don't tell me that you believe, show me. I'll never forget, I walked into our first church, little bitty church. We were renting the building from another denominational organization. And I thought to myself, we need our own place. I happened after a few months to say the word or the phrase building fund. And one of the more prominent people in that congregation says, do not say anything to me about a building fund ever again. He said, I know of at least 2 or 3 that we've had, and the money always got spent for something else. He said, I worked hard. I put a lot of money in building funds because of a vision of having our own place. And somebody took it and did something else with it. So that's misappropriation of funds. I'm a rookie, but I know that much. We never did have a building fund. That congregation's still in that building. What's left of it. The Western culture model is, how many people can we fit in a building? So you pack one building and you say, we need a bigger building, and you fill that one. And because numbers, and that vision casting, numbers means success. So in that regards, Joel Osteen is probably the most successful pastor in America, or at least one of them. Have you seen how many people get into his stadium? How's your church doing, Doc? How many you running? Doc, what's your tithes like, Doc? That used to be the questions. I didn't want to tell them, well, I got 10. My 4, that makes 14 last week. We had $500 in tithes this past month. I didn't want to tell anybody that. Well, they was talking about how many hundreds that they had, or now it's thousands that they had. How many buildings? It's not how much, the pastor of a church, it's campuses. I've got this campus and that campus and the other campus. And I need a helicopter to fly me from one service to the other. Or else we have the local cops to come in and usher one set of people out while they're directing another set of people in for service number 2. And that happens. Am I throwing off on that? No. I'm happy that somebody's doing something. But that in and of itself does not build a kingdom, and that does not necessarily mean that you're doing what's right. But the Western mindset says that the more people you have, the more correct your message is, and the more righteous evidently you're living, and the more favored your ministry is. Can I tell you that there's some little old ladies and men that are grunts, that are in the trenches with people, holding hands and nursing them through their traumas and getting them through their times of being sick, that will come over and pray for their snotty-nosed kids in the middle of the night when they can't breathe enough to sleep. That will come and sit beside your bed in a hospital when your own family are so busy they can't get there. Those who tend, those who weep, those who handhold, those who care, those who love, those who intercede and pray. Those are the heroes. Those are the ones that have a vision of loving people that far exceed packing folks into a building. Amen. Every genuine move of the Father in any country has been preceded by broken-hearted people hiding away in their bedrooms or in their cellars and crying out, Father, you've got to do something. People are dying and going to hell, and we are not having any move of you. Where are you? We need you. John Wesley would come to a town and he would preach, and thousands would be converted. What history fails to really glamorize is that his brother Charles would take a handful of men and weeks ahead would be in somebody's root cellar crying out for that city. When John got there, the coals of fire were well inflamed and a fire was already burning. He just had to stand up and proclaim the truth, and the work had been done previously in prayer. You and I are here, hearing what I'm saying today, because a grandma years ago somewhere was on her face and praying, Father, redeem your people. Bring us back to your truth. Father, raise up young men and women to preach the word. Father, help us. We need revival. They prayed those prayers, and they've been dead and buried for a generation or more. And now in our day, Yah is raising up people to fulfill the answer to those prayers. We may only be 20,000 now, but can we get a dream and a vision of 100,000 people that will keep Shabbat? Hold on, can you imagine? Can you imagine that people in Gloucester County, would keep Shabbat beyond our congregation? Let's get a vision of pastors standing up with tears rolling down their face and saying, I've got something to tell you that may be hard to hear, but I've been studying the Word, and it's come to me that the Shabbat is not what we've always called the Sabbath. There's a difference, and I've seen it in the Word.
All right. Yes.
Can you imagine? In a county that is driven in the mainstream of things by the seafood industry, that it get hit so hard by the truth of the Word that they stop jerking all the clams and the oysters and the shellfish out of the river. And that the river start cleaning up to where you can see your hand when you put it in. You stick your hand down in the York River up to your elbow, you can't see your hand. But John Smith, when he wrote about coming to this area, said it was clear to the bottom. What happened? We took all the vacuum cleaners out of it and thought they were something to have to eat. What are you saying? I'm just saying. We need to get a vision from him. Somebody, Barry, has got to stand up and begin to declare a vision from on high. But what are we struggling with? The Western culture model offers the rides and the attractions that draw the crowds. Those in the pulpits oftentimes are like carnival barkers. Step right up, come down to this altar, see the plate passing in front of you, and win the prize. This is your chance to see the amazing show that will leave you spellbound. If you don't put on the show, nobody wants to come. Jeremiah said, woe to the shepherds destroying and scattering the sheep in my pastures, declare Yahweh. Therefore, thus says Yahweh Elohim of Israel, against the shepherds who feed my people, you scattered my flock, driven them away, and have not tended them. And see, I am punishing you for the evil of your deeds. It's the Western culture that has determined that if there's not a show to be seen, I'm not interested. I've been there, I've done that. What else you got? So what am I saying? Actually, leadership requires refinement. Joseph had dreams and visions, but his dream and his vision did not necessarily make him capable of seeing them come to pass. Not in his current estate. Well, then why did Yah give him a dream and give him a vision when he was not qualified to see it come to pass? Because in the days of his being refined, he needed something to hold on to. If that young man had not had a dream and had not had a vision, then when he was in Potiphar's house or in Pharaoh's prison, he would have not survived. Yes, ma'am.
It says that, the brothers envied him, but his father guarded the word. So once he got the word that he was dead, I mean, if he guarded the word and there was something back in his mind saying, there's something to this, do you think he totally accepted the fact that Joseph was dead? Or in the back of his mind, if he kept seeing that vision, realizing he can't be dead because of this vision?
I don't know what, I can only guess what may be going through Yaakov's mind at that point. Depression can cloud your mind severely to where you don't think about anything other than what is right here in front of you. Darkness will close in on top of you. It very well may be that he just believed that dream died with Joseph. next week, I believe it is, or the week after, we talk about how that when they tell Yaakov, Joseph lives, then Yaakov has a dream. His prophetic gifting comes back. So depression can rob you of your gift. It can rob you of your dreams and visions. And it's oftentimes the case that one who is a leader, who stood up and declared bold things, when they are alone, they have the Elijah syndrome. You can defeat the priests and prophets of Baal and Asherah and strike a note of fear in the heart of Jezebel herself. And the next thing you know, you're under a bush praying, "I've had enough, just let me go now. And I'm running for my life. And I'm the only one left." Can't tell you the number of Sunday afternoons or Monday mornings where the atmosphere of what's melancholy will just sweep over you. When I was a young pastor, the adage was, never resign your church on Monday morning. At least wait till Tuesday. So there's a lot of young pastors that wouldn't preach real good, stumble through their sermon, and nobody would respond, and they'd want to quit on Monday morning. Yah raised up a woman named Virginia Helper when we were in our first church. And every Monday morning before I could get out of bed, she'd already called, asked to speak to me. So there I am at 6 a.m. talking to this little old woman. I just wanted to call you and tell you how powerful that word was yesterday. And you were right on, and I'm praying for you. And don't you get discouraged. Those bunch of knotheads on that pew, they're going to get it one of these days. And she would call. By the time I got finished talking to her, the spirit of quit had left. I would not have survived the 5.5 years in Covington without Virginia Helper. When we got to Wise County, Virginia Helper took on a new identity. It was Bernice Roberts. And Bernice Roberts would come over, a little old woman who lived right across the field from us, and she was our source of encouragement. I would not have survived the 2 years of Wise County without Bernice Roberts and Guy and Naomi Chester. I saw Sam Fatoni in a vision before I ever moved to Gloucester. There was a group of people standing in the middle aisle of a church, is all I could understand. And when I walked in the back door, a man out of that group turned around and walked toward me and embraced me. And when the first time I saw Sam Fatoni, I said, "You're the man in my vision." So wherever we've been, God has had people, they may not have had a vision, but they knew who did and held them up. I don't know what Yaakov did. I don't know how he survived 22 years, but he did. By the grace of God. Know this, that refining is necessary. It's often been said people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Amen? That's true. It says in chapter 39 in verse 1, it says it twice in that same verse, that Joseph went down. He went doubly down. He went from being the favored son of a very rich man to being sold, standing at an auction block with all the other slaves. Somebody bought him and took him home and told him what his real identity was. You're a slave. You will wear these clothes and this is your job and you will do it or else. He rose up through the ranks, falsely accused of that which he did not do. He ends up in a prison. He's not only told this is what you will wear and this is what you will do, and you are now not a slave, but you are a prisoner. He was told this is your space, and it was small. People kept defining his reality for him. God already told him who he was, but nobody else was agreeing to that. Yehuda went down. In chapter 38 and verse 1, it says he went down to Abdullah, or Hira, the Adullamite. Both of these men had to be taken down. Kepha said this, humble yourselves then under the mighty hand of Elohim so that he exalts you in due time. Can I tell you that in that due time, it takes more time to get there than you might imagine. You see, Joseph thought that the gift and the dream and the ability to interpret dreams is all that was necessary. But when you have a calling, when you have a gift, it only indicates to you that you're in need of processing and refining in order for your gift to become a reality. Those who want to be a leader, listen up. Leadership hurts. We will know who Yeshua is by the scars that he carries. The early leaders in the book of Acts and just beyond, they were beaten, they were imprisoned, they were rejected, they were stoned, they were rejected, and then they were killed. Those who have led revivals have been pelted with rocks or worse, burned out, shot at, ostracized, and beaten because they preached the truth. Consider this thought. Things for a leader, a growing, being refined person who's called to be a leader, things have to go wrong enough for you in order for you to understand what your motivation is. If you've been given a dream, you've been given a vision, you've been given something to do, you feel urged toward a certain thing, at some point, your motivation for that to become a reality has to be challenged. Tamar, in our Torah portion, knew that she needed to be a part of the mothers of Israel. 2 sons of Yehuda had been given to her, and Yah killed them, both of them. The third son in waiting was not going to be given to her. She took matters, right or wrong, into her own hands. But her motivation was not to be seductive. Her motivation was to bear a child and continue the lineage of Yehuda. Otherwise, it was going to die out with him, and the whole tribe was going to be lost. Potiphar's wife may have thought that she was going to be something special by being attached to Joseph, who was obviously a charismatic young man and had a future for some reason in front of him. But when she got challenged, she started pointing her finger and accusing. That tells me her motivation was not to be admired at all. Tamar didn't use the right tactic, I'm sure, but you have to at least admire her motivation. Yehuda's line cannot die out. What is your motivation? I have to tell you that early on, it was about my acceptance, my approval, and my acknowledgement. I wanted people to understand who I was, and I wanted to be included. But somewhere, a church I couldn't take you to this day, in Dayton, Ohio, I found myself snotting and crying in somebody's church carpet floor, praying that the Father would forgive me for hating my people. I was trying to pastor people that had rejected me, and I'd grown to hate them for it. It was then I realized pastoral ministry is about loving people. It's not about being acknowledged and accepted. Why am I here today at House of David? Because I love you. You've challenged me, you bugged me, you worn me out, you've encouraged me, you blessed me. And we're stuck with one another, it would seem. But I love you.
Love you too, Bear.
But I need to declare to you a vision that causes you and I to leave these chairs on Shabbat. And when we go out these doors, to begin to see seeds sown. We are a sack of seeds that have to be sown and go through the refining process of decaying in the ground and being forgotten, that we might bring forth life. We may already be in some part of that process to this point, but the thing is, we need to be fruit-bearing. And here's the encouraging word. In John 15, it says to us that once you have learned to bear fruit, he cuts you and prunes you so that you can bear better and more higher quality fruit. Be encouraged. Have joy. The pruning knife is in your future. I want to finish with this. Scars and war stories will soften the voice of a genuine shepherd. I used to, when I was an evangelist, begin to think, I prayed, Father, I don't have any war stories to tell. I don't have any of these miracle stories that I can get in the pulpit and talk about. I do now. You have to go through some stuff to be able to talk about it. So I can tell you about groaning in the middle of the night, and I can tell you about wrestling demons in your sleep, and I can tell you about casting demons out of people's bodies. I can tell you about preaching and people getting born again. I can tell you about preaching and people looking at you and ready to kill you as soon as you get out the door. Slap you on the back, as good preaching, brother, and the whole time you were preaching, they were sitting there clipping their nails. Chink, 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 chink. Makes me angry to this day. I can tell you about the pastoral council meetings that went good, and I can tell you about those that didn't go so good. I can tell you about false brothers. I can talk to you about deception, but I can talk to you about people who won't quit and are committed and who love each other. Yeshua said, it may not be so among you, but whoever wishes to become great among you, let him become your servant. And whoever wishes to be first among you, let him be your servant. Even as the son of Adam did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. If God's given you a vision and a destiny, without a refined character and a heart for people, nobody's going to follow you to your destiny. I asked Mike on the way down here today, I said, Mike, what's the difference between a leader and a follower? He says, if you go to your destiny and people have followed you, you're a leader. If you turn around and no one's there, you're a follower. There are people who are leaders that don't have a title, but people trust their walk, and so they follow after them. At some point, you either have a vision or you adopt somebody else's. The people in Mitzrayim, what was their vision? Anything's better than this. Moshe shows up, he's got a refined vision. We're going back to the ancestral inheritance of our fathers. Yah said so. They adopted his vision because that was better than what they had. When they got in the wilderness and were tested, it was not any better than Mitzrayim in their estimation. They lost Moshe's vision and went back to the vision of Anything is better than this. Even Mitzrayim is better than this. Let's go back. Moshe never lost his vision. And those who went in, they didn't either. So at this point, what do we got? House of David is two things. It is a safe place for you to come. As we put away our knives and we're not here to butcher one another. Agreed? Number two, we offer to you a family that you can connect to. Those are good, admirable, quality, choice things. However, that safe house of a family to worship with is our status quo. We need a vision beyond. A vision of seeing more people connected. Who are these people? Those who do not feel safe and those who are not connected to family and the spiritual nature. So we got to go find them. And we need to know how we're going to treat them when they come in and how we're going to equip them. Because when they come in, what do people who are not safe do? They're protective. They're defensive. They're ready to fight. They're survivors. And it takes a while for them to learn it's okay. We're not here to hurt you. What do those without family do? They don't know how to get along. They don't know how to plug in. They don't know how to be a family member that encourages somebody else. They are survivors. House of David, let me declare to you, I don't know how we're going to do this, but we need to become a people who turn mere survivors into kingdom people, who become fruit-bearing and reproductive. How in the world are we going to do that? We need to figure that part out. That's our refining. Every one of you have been through your test. Every one of you have been through your hurts. All of you have had your stuff, and here you are. You need to ask yourself a question today. Am I a mere survivor, or am I plugged in for the kingdom? You're not a survivor. You're an overcomer. Maybe that's the way we need to look at it. Turning survivors into overcomers. Amen. Take that and pray with me about that. And let Yah begin to formulate his vision for us. Joseph is going through, in this Torah portion, a process of refining. But without that refining, when he stood up for his opportunity, he would have destroyed people instead of benefiting them. Amen. Your other thoughts and questions? Today's short portion is a gut check type teaching thing. Anybody? So without a vision, people cast off restraint. May God help me to declare a vision. Amen. Amen. Let's stay together. Laura misses being here today. Under the weather, not doing well. I know several are sick. Leslie's not feeling well today. Cheryl, I'm glad to see you. My heart leaped when you went to the Lord.
Yeah.
Missed you.
Yes.
Where you receive the blessing of his name. Yivarekaka Yahweh vayishmareka. Ya'er Yahweh panav ileka Vikuneka. Isa Yahweh Panavilaka. Vyasim Lacha Shalom. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. Yahweh make his face to shine upon you and be gracious and favorable to you. May Yahweh lift up his countenance upon you that he may grant unto you shalom. Amen. Let's turn toward Jerusalem. Shema Israel, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod, Malkutu, Le'olam Va'ed. John, would you pray?
Baruch atah Yahweh Eloheinu melech olam, motzei l'kavim haaretz. Blessed are you, Yahweh, our God, King of the universe, who has brought forth bread from the earth. In the name of your Son, Yeshua HaMashiach, Father, who is our bread of life, we give you thanks and praise always. Amen.
Amen.
Not that you have a reason to